Marcy is going to be revived in Season 3 of Amphibia. There is no longer any doubt about that. Perhaps there never was any doubt about that. I think the amount of people who thought that Marcy was seriously going to stay dead after her shocking demise at the hands of Andreas at the end of Season 2 was a very small group of people. I'm not going to say no one thought she wouldn't be revived. This is the internet after all. You can find people who will defend anything and hold any position, no matter how ludicrous. So I do not think... I should say that absolutely no one thought Marcy wasn't going to come back, but most people, I think, had some idea that she was going to be revived. And of course, we receive confirmation that she is not completely dead in the Season 3 intro sequence. But I would not call that being alive. It's somewhere between life and death in this awkward, crepuscular limbo area. So, the question that I think we have to ask ourselves is how Marcy is going to be revived. Is she being kept alive by those wires? Or are they just a means for Andreas to control her and perhaps use her as a vessel for his master, the enormous bug creature we see first at the end of the first temple episode? Now, if Marcy would have died had it not been for Andreas' technology keeping her alive, then finding a way to permanently bring her back to life is a major objective for our heroes going forward. If not, if Andreas is just using her and she would be fine even without all those tubes poking out of her, then reviving her is just a matter of breaking into Andreas' castle and freeing her from captivity. That is, of course, not as easy as it sounds, but it is nonetheless relatively straightforward. Of course, regardless of whether she is in immediate danger of dying or whether she's in a mostly stable condition except for Andreas using her, they are going to have to break her out of that castle eventually. So, we have to ask ourselves who is going to be the one breaking Marcy out, and I think it's pretty obvious at this juncture that this person is Sasha. Sasha is going to transition into a significantly more overtly heroic role in Season 3. This, I would argue, is not much of a change for Sasha. It is a fulfillment of the better elements of her personality that are apparent beneath all the good-intentioned but ultimately harmful manipulation, but this does not really mark as much of a change in Sasha as I think a lot of people make it out to be. Sasha is not a callous or bitter person. Quite the opposite, she's very kind-hearted and very compassionate. She genuinely wants what's best for those she cares about, even if her idea of what's best for those around her does not always fit with their ideas of what's best for themselves, which causes conflict. A lot of people call Sasha selfish, but she's really not. A selfish person would have a very clear idea of what they want and be willing to push everyone else out of the way to get that. Sasha is the exact opposite. She's honestly selfless to a fault. She thinks about other people a lot more than she thinks about her own wishes and her own desires, which leaves her in this malaise at the end of Season 2. Since she defines herself so heavily by how she helps others and tries to help them get what they want and what's best for them, Sasha is left really isolated when she loses the people she cares most about in the world. Now, Sasha is a little vain, she is a little arrogant. but these are not necessarily negative qualities. Her arrogance can express itself in negative ways, such as her not always taking into account what people actually want for themselves, but it can also express itself in a more positive way. She likes to show off, and not in a morally empty sense, but in the sense that she wants other people to think well of her. She wants them to think she is a good person, a helpful person, a person who is heroic and thoughtful, and someone who is always there to take care of those who need her. We see this express itself a lot more openly and obviously when Sasha's a kid and she acts like a superhero trying to protect Anne and Marcy, even though at this point she doesn't know them. But this is still who Sasha is, and that's not a bad thing. She's willing to think about the world outside herself. She's compassionate, and she's brave and bold, and willing to take a lot of risks in order to help those she believes need her help. These are all good qualities for a leader to have. And now that Sasha has been on the path of improving herself for most of Season 2, she's in a prime position to step into a more overtly heroic role in Season 3. Now, I doubt she's going to be worrying a lot about Anne in the start of Season 3, because Anne basically got what she wanted. What did Anne want? She wanted to go home and leave Amphibia. That has always been Anne's objective, and now Anne has fulfilled that objective. For the record, I want to note that even when Sasha is quote-unquote betraying Anne, she is still very much taking into account what Anne wants, at least at first. She makes Anne an offer that either I can send you home like you wanted, or you can stay here and help me. That is completely reasonable. And even though Anne reacts so negatively to this, Sasha does not have her carted off to the dungeons until Sasha has no reason to believe that Anne is going to behave anyways but antagonistically towards Sasha. I really don't think Sasha's in the wrong in True Colors. I really don't. At all. Like, even before she learns the truth about Andreas. And I think there's a little bit of resentment between Anne on one hand and Marcy and Sasha on the other. Anne has two loving families, her family back home and her family of frogs and Amphibia. Sasha and Marcy don't have anyone. They only have each other. Sasha has Grime too, but although he has been exerting a more positive influence on her as of late, let's not forget that he started off by imprisoning her in a dank prison for however long, about a month, and he only lets her out once she proves that she can be useful to him. And even after that point, Grime is so consistently in low spirits into Season 2, and Sasha has to be the one to take care of him. He's not exactly a perfect father figure to her. And then you have Marcy, who believes that she's finally found this comforting family that is going to encourage her best qualities, encourage her to really achieve her potential as someone who studies a lot, who loves learning, and who loves translating that learning into helping people in material ways, like she did in Amphibia. But no, the familial rapport Andreas had toward her was just a facade, and that's torn away, leaving Marcy with no one. Looking at Marcy and Anne, Sasha's two best friends, Marcy is the one whose plight is most severe. Her melioristic passions have disintegrated into sheer despondency. Sasha is going to have to help Marcy, and help her any way she can. And I hope that as Sasha helps Marcy, we see a lot more about their relationship because thus far we have not really seen that as much, because so much of what we have seen of Sasha and Marcy's relationship has been filtered through the prism of Anne's relationship with the two of them. And I'm not saying I don't like Anne, but so much of the show has been in her perspective that I'm really interested to get more of Sasha and Marcy's perspectives. Brawley has mentioned that there was a very strong understanding that existed between Marcy and Sasha. They connected with each other immediately. They understood the other's plans and desires in a way that they really did not with Anne. Anne has always been more socially focused. She's always been, kind of flighty, a little lazy at the start before she acclimates to Amphibia. Always a little hesitant, whereas Sasha and Marcy, it's like there's an electric wire running between them. One has an idea and it just passes instantaneously to the other, and the other's on board. I hope we get to see more of that relationship as Season 3 progresses. Marcy, if she does need to be revived in a way that's more than just pulling her out of that tube, Sasha is going to have a lot to do with that revival. By this point, Sasha will have won the support of the citizens of Wartwood, which is not going to be easy for her, considering that they are, perhaps quite understandably, in opposition to her. I think she'll be able to do it. They'll help her try and rescue Marcy, and once they get Marcy back to Wartwood, they'll help heal her. And I do believe that Maddie is going to have some relation to the whole problem of bringing Marcy back. It's not going to be a traditional reincarnation, technically, because, again, Marcy's not really dead, but I think Maddie is going to have to use one of her spells. I mean, it would really seem like a wasted opportunity if you have Marcy very much set up as a close friend to Maddie, to the extent that there is an entire episode focusing on that relationship, and then you do not have Maddie do something to help bring Marcy back. That would seem very awkward and strange. Maddie is going to have some part in Marcy's revival, but what's going to be most important is the relationship between Marcy and Sasha. That is going to be what will need to be explored as Marcy is revived. That is what gives the whole bringing Marcy back to life real emotional depth. That's what makes it more than just a part of a laundry list of plot elements that need to be checked off before our trio reunites to go and take out Andreas. I want to see Sasha explore her feelings toward Marcy, whatever those feelings may be. And if Anne is somehow back in Wartwood by the time they formally bring Marcy back, I want to see Anne's feelings toward Marcy explored too, particularly in the context of Anne realizing that she hasn't been the best friend to Marcy. Now, obviously, Marcy hasn't been perfect either, and Anne could resent her for a bit, but Anne really needs to realize that she, despite her belief that she's grown so much, has not treated Marcy the best, and that Anne's relatively poor treatment of her friends is a major reason why True Colors went as poorly as it did for the three of them. Nonetheless, I do think the focus should remain on the bond between Sasha and Marcy, since that is a potentially fruitful bond that has not really been explored nearly to the extent that it should be. Exploring this bond would really make the whole sequence of events leading to Marcy's revival feel much more important and alive. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. keep watching Amphibia. It's a sneakily smart show, and I love how it can effectively critique its characters without lapsing into either cheap, forgive everything sentimentality, or nihilistic, this person is the worst in the world judgmentalism. It really understands desperation, longing, and how they can drive people to do things that people otherwise would not have considered doing. It's a great show. So anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. I promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.